And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate. Happy National Championship Day on the men's basketball side to all who celebrate. Happy Solar Eclipse Day to all who celebrate. Remember to wear the proper eye protection if you're looking straight at the sun. That's what the doctors say, at least. Tom, you're too strong for this. And
that's baby advice.
We have the first of many Saturdays with some spring game action that we're going to talk about. A little bit of a lighter load that we had this past Saturday. Things really pick up this coming weekend and then the weekend after. But coming up in a little bit, we will be breaking down the confidence in Clemson's quarterbacks, an emerging stud at Auburn in terms of the pass catchers that they have there. And NC State loaded up on the transfer portal in this cycle. What do we think from what we were able to see from the spring in with the Wolfpack? But a little bit of one of the biggest stories really within all of college sports has generated a lot of conversation both on the college football side as well, because John Calipari leaving Kentucky to go take the Arkansas job, with everything that had been going on at Kentucky, the frustrations with Coach Cal after another unexpected exit. But is Jimbo Fisher the best example of what we have with Coach Cal in terms of his exit from Florida State going to Texas A&M?
I think, yeah. And the key word there is best, right? It's not the perfect corollary, but it is probably the best one that we've had, I think, at least in major college sports. So you have a guy who's a wildly successful coach. He won a national championship at a school that has national championship expectations. Externally, he's still thought of pretty well. This is where I think one of the key differences are. Internally, there's a lot of people who are just tired of this guy's act, right? Like Florida State fans were not fully ready, but kind of ready to run Jimbo out if he wasn't going to make a couple changes. Kentucky fans seem really ready to run Calipari out. Then you get a school which is a downgrade in terms of job, but does have a ton of cash. They have not. Arkansas's won a national title, right? Like a long time ago.
Yeah,
1994. Yeah, 94.
40 minutes of hell. Nolan Richardson.
40 minutes of hell.
Corliss
Right.
Williamson.
And at one time, Texas A&M had the record defense or whatever it is. So I guess we have the comp there. I think it's a pretty good one. It doesn't mean he can't have success, right? Jimbo failed to have success at Texas A&M because all the things that Florida State fans were bitching about, he failed to change once he got to A&M, right? If Calipari changes some things, apparently he's going to have reportedly here a $5 million NIL budget because he's buddies with one of the Tyson Foods guys, which is awesome. I guess $5 million for basketball is a ton of money. Like that. Maybe he crushes it there. Maybe they don't rely just on freshmen. Maybe he embraces the transfer portal a little bit more. But yeah, I think you got one fan base going to be really happy. And I think another fan base, Kentucky fan base, probably also pretty happy, depending on who they get.
Finally, Calipari's going to be able to recruit.
Dude, he had so many limitations at the University of Kentucky.
I don't want to get too deep into the basketball side of this, but it is funny to me, like the Arkansas fans, like, well, he'll be able to recruit here. He has NIL money. It's like, yeah, Kentucky, he had nothing. It was just, it's a football school, and they don't really care about the basketball program there. I think Jimbo Fisher is the best comp for anybody that's not overly familiar. Although, Chip, how old were you when Arkansas won that national title?
8, 7, 8.
Okay. So do you even have any recollection of those teams?
Oh, 100%. Because Duke, it was in Charlotte, and Duke played them in the national championship game, and it was the year after North Carolina had just beaten the Fab Five in 1993. So my college basketball awareness was turned on at that point, and I think it was that Arkansas team. It was maybe 95 was the one where the backboard broke in the run, right?
I can't remember what year it was, but I remember the backboard breaking. Yes.
Yeah. So I was kind of dialed into this. The thing that is really funny to me about this is it goes back to one of our prevailing themes from the beginning of the coaching football carousel, where everyone's running to the NFL. College football is dying because coaches don't want to deal with the transfer portal. And we found more often than not at each one of these stops, this is a restart the clock move. And John Calipari right now is restarting the clock because he had, the reaction within Kentucky of a lot of frustration where after the Oakland loss, you're like, oh my gosh, like, are they going to pay $35 million to buy him out of this contract? But John Calipari leaving had a $0 buyout. So there was always the option that if there was somewhere else that John Calipari wanted to go. What I did not know, and what I think is just unbelievably perfect for high-level college sports, is that he's best friends with one of the billionaire heirs to the Tyson chicken industry. And between the Florida State chicken farmer and Tyson chicken peeling off millions of dollars, I mean, what a couple years for poultry.
A lot of money in processed chicken.
Poultry is just really coming through big for college sports in a big way. So, obviously Eye on College basketball, Matt Norlander and Kyle Boone, they were up late last night. Go follow them for all of their reactions. Matt Norlander did an incredible job breaking this news as everything unfolded really, really quickly on Sunday night. So, go check out them for more of that. But for me, I just thought it was like such a funny reminder of the high stakes that we have at the highest levels of college sports, and also just how these coaching carousels and these coaching changes, sometimes the smallest little details, like being buddies with a billionaire heir to a chicken company, can end up making these seemingly unthinkable happen. And the seemingly unthinkable, in my opinion, is that Kentucky's head basketball coach would leave to go be the head coach at Arkansas.
And I feel like it's a restarting the happiness clock and the enjoyment and quality of life clock. Because I don't know if he's going to make more money at Arkansas than he was at Kentucky. And they owed him $35 million if they wanted to fire. Like, they were not going to do that this time. Like, maybe next time, who knows? But if you're Calipari, you've made so much money coaching basketball. In some ways, it makes more sense to, like, this is sort of, in a very small way, kind of Chip Kelly-ish. It's like, I'm going to go where I'm happier, right? Like, I don't want to deal with all this. Kentucky has, like, I don't want to get this clip and say that Arkansas does not have expectations, because they do have some expectations. And clearly, if you're throwing around like a high level NIL budget, you have expectations. But it's kind of big, like divorce dad energy, right? Like, oh, he's like new guy, a lot of good things there, other problems ignore type thing. I'll be interested to see, but I think it's for Calipari. It's like, I'm gonna be happier here.
I liked Ryan's comp in the chat. He says this is like if Dabo struggles for a few more years at Clemson and then leaves for Miami.
Ooh. Yeah, a guy who failed to adapt to the portal. Yeah, exactly.
What about one last piece, and then we can move on. Is Mark Stoops running the athletic department now?
Yes. He's in charge. He's the boss now. It's a football school. I made this. It was a joke, but I said when they wouldn't pay the buyout to get rid of him, Kentucky was officially a football school. Now Calipari's leaving for Arkansas. Come on, you're a football school now. Give Stoops the bag. Go win the SEC and get to the playoff.
They spent like Mark Stoops and John Calipari were, there was, I guess, like last year, I think, a little bit going back and forth about football school, basketball school. This is clear. Mark Stoops won. He might have said his goodbyes on that night thinking he was headed to Texas A&M, but look where sliding doors, man. Look where things land now. Congratulations, Mark Stoops. You now run the Kentucky athletic department.
Unless they raise expectations on it.
It's got to be like,
and then
Game
like
of Thrones
Kentucky football job with expectations is a terrible job. Kentucky football job with reasonable expectations and just, hey, make bowl games. That's a good job.
Does Mark Stoops know any processed chicken distributors that he could help build that roster up?
I don't know.
He's in the distillery game.
I was gonna say he's in the distillery, the bourbon game. I know that for sure.
I don't know. Is bourbon money the same as chicken money though?
I'm way out of my weight class on this one. I'm going to say no.
No, I don't think so. Everybody likes chicken. Not everybody can take bourbon.
Yeah, there's not a Dino Nuggets option for bourbon that we can provide to all ages.
I think there's like flavored bourbons for like 16-year-olds out there now trying to slowly wean them onto it.
Yeah.
It tastes like cinnamon.
All right, before we start to get into some of our spring game takeaways from the past weekend, wanted to get back into some camp buzz, because what we have is a payoff on something that Bud told you about last week. Because we were saying, oh, what's the deal at Ohio State? Bud, you mentioned that Julian Sayin was generating a lot of positive reviews, but that more than anything, what we have from Jeremiah Smith might be something incredibly special. That the 5-star wide receiver, former number 1 prospect from the recruiting class, who has enrolled early, is turning heads. And Debo, if we could get this clip here for those watching on YouTube, I mean, this guy's body control on this one-handed grab. I mean, look at this. Oh my goodness!
I could do that though. That's not that hard.
I mean, but like,
there's a YouTube short on our channel that I put up like 18 months ago of him doing this to a corner who was a borderline like 5-star corner at the time, who stood out in yesterday's spring game at Clemson. He did this to him in 7-on, kind of the same thing. Guys grabbing him, falling away, one-handed. The thing I've always thought, like kind of Julio Jones is here. Just body control, size, the ability to move at that size in terms of style. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be Julio Jones, but then somebody posted all of Dan Orlovsky's career touchdowns. I was like, man, I really don't want to ever comp anybody to Calvin Johnson, so I'm still not going to. But a couple of those one-handers Calvin Johnson made for Orlovsky touchdowns, it's like, this is a little similar looking, so we're just going to keep that in the back of the mind.
All right, I started watching that Orlovsky touchdown video because I figured it was going to be 90 seconds long. And that was 7.5 minutes. And of course, the first 5 were all to Calvin Johnson. But am I the only one who was shocked that Dan Orlovsky had 7.5 minutes worth of touchdowns in the NFL?
No, not at all. Listen, you think about the state. Well, I'm just saying, like, you think about the game script that the Detroit Lions had to face most of the time. I mean, we're throwing the ball. So, all right, let's go reckless predictions here. Tom, do you think that Jeremiah Smith will be a top 2 receiver in either receptions or receiving yards for Ohio State this season?
This season?
Mm-hmm. True freshman.
Yeah. Why not? Let's do it. Let's throw those I mean, you look at that receiver room, they've got, it's Ohio State. They've got plenty of talent, but I like Emeka Egbuka, but is he a surefire number 1 option for you? I don't know. And I think that you've got Carnell Tate, who he's from this area. I'm familiar with him. I think he's very talented. But I just, like Bud said last week, it's not often that a wide receiver is the number 1 recruit in the country. So if you're putting him at number 1, the kid's probably ready right from the jump. Maybe they work him in slowly because he's not overly familiar. But I think him getting there this spring, being there for spring practice, he'll be there all summer. I'd anticipate by the time the season starts, he's going to be familiar with the playbook. He's clearly very talented. I won't be shocked at all if he's one of their top 2 receivers. No.
I'm going to agree. Yeah. Like I like Carnell Tate. I do think Egbuka is good. But I think he's going to be top 2 in receiving.
All right. So, and like, help me out with the structure of this offense, because I'm not the sharpest one on this one, but if I remember the way that Egbuka fit in with the wide receivers in each of the last 2 years, he is obviously like a great option in space. You've got good underneath, options for him, but the way that the plays were constructed, and we've got a new offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly, so you never know. But Egbuka, to me, seems like the incredibly reliable, like, I'm not going to throw the safety blanket word out there, but at least not somebody who every single play is going to start with, let's find this guy. Does that seem right?
Fair.
Yeah. And they also try to find a way to manufacture touches for Egbuka. If we recall, they got the first down against the Irish on that 4th and 1 on an end around to Egbuka. Right?
That's what I'm thinking about, like a mesh end around. A lot of like, okay, this guy can scoot in the open field. Let's draw it up. But when we're going to talk about somebody who can make a one-on-one catch, Jeremiah Smith looks much more like the NFL draft bound player who the Buckeyes just said goodbye to than Egbuka necessarily. Like, Egbuka cannot be Marvin Harrison. He wasn't Marvin Harrison. He was asked to do different Marvin Harrison things. Just because Marvin Harrison is gone and Abuka's the leading returning receiver doesn't mean that he's all of a sudden going to take on a Harrison workload or Harrison responsibility. Like, it seems more likely that would be potentially something that could fall to Jeremiah Smith. Again, with Chip Kelly taking over as OC being the big wrinkle, because we don't even know how exactly things are going to look.
And they have the thing about this is they have no shortage of talent at the receiver position, so it could go any number of ways. But that another part of the equation is Will Howard.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
like I don't know if he's if you watch Will Howard at Kansas State, he seems to obviously Kansas State did not have nearly the depth of talent at pass catchers that Ohio State has, but Howard kind of focused in on one or two guys most of the time in Kansas State's offense. Is he going to be the same way at Ohio State, or will he be able to spread the ball around more? That's something we haven't really learned yet.
Also, Travion Henderson, former SEC Rookie of the Year Quinshon Judkins.
They're going to score points,
Hayden.
Yeah.
How many times are they going to need to throw the ball, or push it down the field? We'll see.
If the O-line bounces back a little bit, like that's going to be a key I'm looking for with them.
Yeah.
We'll see it next weekend at the spring game, I guess, right?
Yeah. They are undoubtedly one of the headliners. And I remember on Thursday, in addition to diving into the big old bag of mail, we will be doing our look aheads next Monday with some of our takeaways. Speaking of, coming up on the other side, we begin our spring game takeaways from Saturday with the Clemson program that is looking to reclaim its place atop the ACC. What did we see from the Tigers? How much confidence do we have? And what are our concerns? All that and more next.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. And, I got to say, there has been, let's go to, I'm going to pull up Richard right here. Richard from the tailgate jumped in early. He was in about 40 minutes before we got started. He said, man, as a Clemson fan, walking away from this weekend thinking Trent Pearman might be our best quarterback is disheartening. Pearman did have about a 55-yard bomb of a touchdown from the end zone at his back. It was disheartening. Biggest disappointment for me was Cade Klubnik. Is it possible he's regressed? So, Bud, let's start right there with a player who has 21 touchdowns and 12 interceptions in his career as a Tiger, 1 full year as a starter, and a little bit of time when he was spelling DJU as a true freshman, former 5-star prospect. And when we married him with new offensive coordinator Garrett Riley, the expectations were that this could unlock Klubnik and take the Clemson offense to the next level. I don't think we saw that. Dabo Swinney's been very critical this in terms of his expectations of where he wants to see Cade Klubnik improve. That includes not holding on to the ball too long. He took 28 sacks last season. And that also includes situational awareness, as he made some really poor decisions in the losses to Florida State and Miami, 2 crucial losses in terms of Clemson in the ACC title race. Richard was disappointed with everything that we saw on Saturday, but also just that we've gathered from around Clemson. What do you make of where Klubnik is at heading into summer workouts?
So I thought he didn't look worse than he did last year. And Clemson's spring game offensively this year, I think, was better than it was the last 2 spring games. I mean, like, we've gone a couple of years in a row with Clemson spring games being, I don't know here. But he certainly didn't look a lot better than he did last year. And I think you would expect to see a little more command of the offense. Now, a couple of key guys were out for Clemson. Like, they didn't have their starting center. They didn't have their starting left tackle. Now, they also didn't have Parker or Woods, two like stud young defensive linemen. But it's very clear that the backup defensive linemen for Clemson are a lot better than backup offensive linemen. I believe they had 14 tackles for loss, like 6 or 7 batted passes, a couple picks, a bunch of sacks. They had a real hard time blocking the backup defensive lineman for Clemson. I think Clemson has a really good D-line. Like, I think Capart's a stud, Woods, Parker. Hell, a couple of these young guys they have they look damn good. So, I mean, Clemson's defensive line development, they probably have the best D-line in the ACC, I think. So, even with the guys who they just lost. So, yeah, Klubnik did not look great. I don't think he looked like much worse than he looked last year. And I like a lot of the young talent on this team still.
I don't have a day trading Danny segment of my own, but if I did, I would have sold Klubnik a long time ago, and I'd have felt fine about it, and I would still feel fine about it. I'm just not high on him. I think that we had plenty of hype around him while DJU was there because he was, it's like he wasn't DJU. And it's like that similar feeling that a lot of fan bases have when they're not happy with their starting quarterback is the backup's great because he plays a couple snaps and he looked good in the plays that the 4 plays he's been practicing for the last 3 months. He looked good executing them. He's the future. But I mean, since Klubnik took over the starting role, I have been very underwhelmed. I don't think he's a great passer. I don't think he's great at going through reads. I think that even on read option plays, he doesn't make good reads. He keeps the ball too often when he should be handing it off, particularly in the red zone. I don't think it's all on him because we've talked about it too. I think Clemson's offensive line, and as we saw in the spring game, has been a problem for them in recent seasons. And I think having DJU as a battering ram was somewhat important for them because he was able to break through some of the guys coming through. But I do think that if Clemson is going to win the ACC this year, and I'm not just basing this off of the spring game, I think their defense is going to have to be outstanding because I don't think this is a team that's going to be scoring 30 points per game. I think it's going to be scoring more in that 20 to 27 range, which isn't ideal, but might be good enough. But I think that with Klubnik, like, there's a ceiling, and I think maybe there's some room for an improvement. Maybe, again, we don't want to put too much into a spring game performance. But what the spring game looked like, what we saw last year, maybe a second year in Garrett Riley's offense will be beneficial. Maybe getting better players around him will be beneficial. But when I watch Cade Klubnik, that does not strike me as a quarterback who's going to win the national title or could win the ACC. That's just how I feel.
I think the quarterback play in the ACC is really bad this year.
Yeah, I saw Jules in the tailgate just said, does the ACC have any good quarterbacks, and offered Cam Ward from Miami as an option?
Cam Ward's clearly the best.
Okay.
I feel like
Is Klubnik number 2?
No.
We could say that about the Big Ten. We could say that it's like I feel like going into the season, we don't know who the great QBs are, and somebody's going to emerge. Somebody will be very good. I'm very confident it won't be Cade Klubnik, and I think that's a big problem for Clemson.
That's probably fair. Although I could see an outcome where he does end up being like the second best guy. I thought Antonio Williams looked pretty damn good for them, the receiver. It was nice to like have a reminder he's back. They got some stud freshmen.
I was going to say, like, Bryant Wesco, like if we're going to talk about the freshmen that are continuing to impress, there has been so much buzz around the 5-star early enrollee freshman wide receiver, Bryant Wesco. He's a special player, and sometimes special wide receivers are going to be able to help you look better. Hello, Kelly Bryant. Like the Kelly Bryant 2017 ACC championship run happens. Yeah, like Kelly Bryant, capable, power conference quarterback, but Clemson wins that because they also have great capital G, great talent at the wide receiver position. Wesco is going to upgrade that in a big way. You mentioned some of the guys that were out. So like starting running back Phil Maffa, who we know is an absolute workhorse. He was a student coach for this game. Jake Briningstool, who I think is like legitimately a good tight end.
Yeah.
And like is going to be really important. He did not play. He was a student coach. Linebacker Barrett Carter, another phenomenal talent. He didn't play in this game. RJ Mickens did not play in this game. Peter Woods, the stud defensive tackle, has mono, but be on the lookout for the fact that he also has dropped some weight and is going to be flipping outside a little as a defensive end. No, well, probably, but that's been part of his conditioning plan. Is they're going to have him, do a little bit of defensive end as well. Vic Burley did not play in this game, but you mentioned on the defensive side. But I need to go back and I wanted to ask you for your Sammy Brown book or like the Sammy Brown note card, because the early enrollee 5-star freshman linebacker, he had one play where, you mentioned all the sacks and tackles for losses. He had a play in this game where he looked like he was shot out of a cannon, just flying off the edge to get in there for one of the, big air quotes, sacks that you have in a spring game. Are you surprised that Sammy Brown has been able to hit the ground running there with Clemson?
So when I first saw Sammy Brown's workout clips, which were kind of viral all over Twitter, it was kind of like, okay. But man, when you watch him actually play, like the huddle, it's like, shoot, this guy has like good instincts. He's plenty twitchy. Like he's a strong kid who gets after it. When I watched, like, the style that it reminds me of, not the talent, because I think this guy's like one of the best guys we've ever seen, but just kind of the style of the game reminds me a little bit of LeVar Arrington. You know,
yeah, big praise.
Yeah.
Big dude, right? Who was twitchy enough, could rush the passer some, like, great in coverage, no, but like enough to where you don't have to take him off the field. I really think they got something there in Sammy Brown. He's a dude who can thump, but he can also run really well. The kid I mentioned in the Jeremiah Smith video, right? It went kind of viral on our YouTube shorts. Tavoy Fegan, I thought, played nice. Right, freshman corner out of the Tampa area. And I mean, Jeremiah Smith just cooked him on like 5 straight reps on the little YouTube short we put together. That's why you watch this on YouTube. But if you're not facing Jeremiah Smith, you could look pretty good. So I thought he looked nice. Avion Terrell is still an absolute stud for this team, I think, at corner.
Man, this is a young team that could, this is a young team that could really use some transfers. It's a young team that if only
you just supplemented that roster a little bit with some veteran experience.
Literally, the Baltimore Orioles comp we use is like continuing to work here. It's like, oh wow, this is a young team. Really, like, they're kind of arriving a year early. I wonder if we put a veteran or two on this team, it could really help.
Get yourself a Corbin Burns out of the transfer portal.
Yes,
see if you can take a step forward.
Is it possible in college football to just instantly add veterans to your roster? Is that allowed in 2024? Huh, that's interesting.
If I'm Clemson, I'm really trying to go just bring somebody who's played some offensive line in, as a backup offensive line. So 99 and 15, I didn't know who these guys were. I had to go look them up. It's Hoffler and then Jaheim Lawson. Those guys ate those offensive linemen's lunch, and I don't think they're starters. Maybe Hoffler could be a strong rotation piece. I think they have some pretty nice defensive linemen there at Clemson still. K Park's still a really nice player for them. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. You just quarterback, and then I think offensive line is a continuing question. Also, if Antonio Williams is back and like Tyler Brown can be a legit 2 for you, and Jake's there, like, Brinkstool's going to be a draftable player probably.
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely.
Those are some nice weapons.
Might be a day 3 guy, but he's definitely draftable.
Yeah, it is. You can convince me that outside of offensive line and quarterback, every box is checked for Clemson to be at the top of the ACC. Those are 2 very, very important boxes that still need to be checked.
Yeah.
Okay. After watching the spring game, and you haven't seen Miami's or Florida State's spring game, do you feel like Clemson being the favorite, like betting wise, for the league is incorrect?
No.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't know.
So my argument on that is a little bit of being indoctrinated into the Church of Dabo and just understanding like his overall conservative style, that even when they have all the weapons, it's not like if they don't have Deshaun or Trevor Lawrence, they're not even playing the game to overwhelm you and playing good enough defense, punting from plus territory, kicking field goals instead of going for it on 4th down. Like, you were going to get that anyway. And when you are so good defensively and you've got enough of those other special skill players around, when you might just need like 1 or 2 truly explosive plays to be able to put you over the top in some of your toughest games in conference play. I think that of all the offensive defensive units, if we were to break them all out and rank them, Clemson's defense is number 1 of all the units in the ACC. And the way that Clemson handles its business traditionally says that's going to be good enough for them to end up, like, not to necessarily, I mean, they're not going to beat Georgia that way, but they can win enough games to make the ACC championship game. And then I would pick them right now as the favorite.
Yeah, I think they have the most difference makers, like the most special players of the contenders. I think Clemson has the most.
Yeah, will be very interesting to keep an eye on. Well, the Clemson Tigers were not the only team that we had our attention on over the weekend. They weren't even the only Tigers. So let's take a look. We had questions about quarterback. We'd heard some buzz about another wide receiver. We'll turn our attention to the Plains and the Auburn Tigers, all that, and NC State Wolfpack next.
You came down here to tell us that your date is missing.
I did not get ghosted. I think he was taken.
You were dating as a way to face your divorce.
Was I really the only thing holding you together, D?
Damn.
Ready or not,
I am in search of a man with whom I had a beautiful connection.
you can't hide.
If anything feels off, we'll go. Off.
Murderer.
Who are you?
Diara.
Diara?
Find you.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Bud, one of the things I love about Camp Buzz is when you're able to, drop a little nugget, drop a little note that we're hearing from our friends at 24/7 Sports, and then when it pays off on the screen in a spring game, it warms my heart. It's like these guys and gals know what they're doing. So Cam Coleman is, from what I've gathered, the pristine example of development across your high school career. And that the player that he was when you start ranking these guys as like a sophomore, and the player that he was when he shows up as an early enrollee in January are worlds apart. And yes, there's physical development there, but there's also just your own development as a player. Gathering what we've been able to gather from Auburn spring game. Am I wrong to say that freshman wide receiver Cam Coleman, and maybe just the rest of the wide receivers in general, are probably the thing that Auburn fans are the most excited about?
I have to think so, yeah. I mean, Auburn did a great job signing receivers this last year. Cam Coleman is a guy who I think in many other years of recruiting would have been the number one receiver. We just had a guy,
Jeremiah Smith.
And Jeremiah Smith, right. So, but I think put him in this year's class, I think he's probably one. Put him in a prior year's class, I think he's probably one. So a guy who has tremendous body control, really nice hands, can go up and get the football. He's not quite as big and physical as a Jeremiah, but compared to most freshman receivers, certainly has plenty of that. And Auburn's receiver room, it looks improved. Fairweather is a nice guy catching the ball at tight end. Camden Brown is a guy they liked, who I think showed some progression there in the spring game. We know what Robert Lewis, the Georgia State transfer, can do, but Coleman is the guy that just looks different on this team. And Auburn's a team that I'm circling for 2025, not 2024. Just to me, based on how the talent on that team is, but I'm excited to watch him this year.
So would you say that you're a Fairweather fan?
What? Oh God, man, come on. Where's my soundboard? I don't have my sad track. Up here in Stamford, Connecticut, getting ready for CBS Sports HQ coverage of the national championship game tonight. Yeah, there you go. Good job. What about the Peyton Thorne of it all? I mean, do you that's who you're going with, right? I mean, they went into the messaging from the coaching staff and those within the program is that they were going to treat it like an open competition, and it very quickly took a turn where Peyton Thorne was ahead of everybody else who was battling for the job. Tom, you actually said as an exact quote here on the Cover 3 podcast, I've made my opinions on Peyton Thorne very clear. I mean, guys, is that a limiting? Are we dealing with another situation like Clemson where we are looking at the quarterback as a limiting factor?
Yeah. Peyton Thorne is a jag. Not even going to give him the plus. He's a jag. He's just a guy to me. You just want him to be able to get the ball where the ball is designed to go and hope things don't blow up in your face while it happens. And I think that, you know what? If Auburn's goal this year is to get to a bowl game, I think they can do that with Peyton Thorne. Auburn's ultimate goal to me is not just to go bowling. They want to be competing for SEC titles. They want to be competing for playoff bids now at this point and national titles. And we've seen proof of concept with Cam Newton not too long ago. They can win a national title. They almost won a national title against Florida State before the playoffs started in the final BCS game. So you can do it there. It's just, what are the expectations for Auburn this year? If Hugh Freeze understands that they're not expecting that this season, then you roll with Peyton Thorne. But if they want to make a push for a playoff spot in 2024, they need to hit the portal as soon as spring practice ends.
Of the teams that we think got an easy or a difficult SEC draw, Auburn is more on the difficult side. They have to play Georgia. Missouri normally is not tough, and they do draw Vandy, which does help. but still, like they get A&M, they get Bama, they get Georgia.
I would count Missouri. We got to count Missouri in 2024 like a tough draw.
Yeah.
I don't know if they will be when they have to play them
At
again
Kentucky.
in 25.
I mean, I think Auburn this year, a reasonable expectation is to comfortably make a bowl game before heading to Tuscaloosa.
Don't go into that game needing to be bowl eligible.
Correct. Yeah. So go into that game with the chance to get to 7 or 8 wins. Basically.
Can you imagine the momentum that would give them, though? And I know momentum, but if Hugh Freeze was able to go to Alabama this year and win the Iron Bowl in DeBoer's first season, just what that could do for them on the recruiting trail heading into the offseason.
I want it for the drama, obviously. I just, to me, there's absolute scenario because Auburn has kind of kept the powder dry with the transfer portal this year. Like, I don't think that they, assuming that this is a plan, I really wonder if there's a chance that Auburn's just kind of sitting on a bunch of cash for 2025 and they're like, boom, $22 million in NIL spend next portal season. Okay, we like Keldrick Falk ends up being a stud. Year 2, Coleman. Maybe Walker White wins the job. If not, we're going to go drop some serious cash and go get us a stud quarterback. Like, they've done a really nice job recruiting high school. Like, I could totally see this coming together. A couple of these kids develop. In the spots where they don't, you go out, flush with cash, buy a bunch of studs. Bama comes to Auburn in year 3 of Hugh Freeze. If I'm Auburn, I'm probably waiting because I don't think there's really a path to win anything this year. Okay, keep the powder dry, blow it up for the 2025 transfer portal. Just outspend everybody.
All right, we'll keep this in the live show, but we'll edit it out for the audio and for the replay of the video on YouTube. This is just between us right now. Let's start the 2025 Auburn quarterback Arch Manning narrative right now.
Oh, no, that's too good. I'm sorry. We have to leave that in.
I'm saying we will push it in future episodes, but we're planning right now for the show in the future.
Arch Manning, transfer portal, Arch Manning, transfer portal, Arch Manning, transfer portal destinations. Speaking of transfer portal, Hugh Freeze did say that they are looking for defensive linemen in the upcoming portal cycle. A reminder that the portal will open on April 15th. It will be open for about 2 weeks, closing on April 30th. We, of course, will do comprehensive coverage here on the Cover 3 podcast. So what's on if Auburn's looking for defensive linemen, and this is always a difficult game to play because we don't know exactly how robust the options are going to be. But if I was to say that if someone said we're looking for offensive linemen in the portal, I'd be like, ugh, like, get ready to learn D3, buddy. But like for defensive linemen, do y'all think that there's going to be capable options where if Auburn does want to peel off some of that 2025 budget and be able to go get, a real game changer on the defensive side of the ball, do you think that those kind of options will be out there?
When did Bear Alexander go in the portal last year?
He was after the national championship game.
Okay.
For spring practice,
I think Bear strikes me as, or at least a prospect like that strikes me as the absolute best you can hope for in the post-spring portal, and that it's a guy who maybe was rated highly coming out of high school, but has been in a position where he hasn't really been able to get on the field somewhere, and he's just looking for an opportunity to start. So, I don't think you're not going to find a Walter Nolan in the portal after spring, but you might find somebody like that, like a high upside guy with very little experience. So I don't know.
I mean, you're basically looking at established guys outside of the SEC, because the SEC, you can't transfer within the SEC, who maybe you're in a spot where the NIL is not great, or maybe they don't like the coaching staff where they're at. My guess is somebody big will hit the portal from the Big Ten or maybe the Big 12. ACC got picked over a little bit, so I don't know how many guys are truly left there to get picked over, but we'll see.
Charles in the tailgate doing a great callback. It was the day of Georgia's spring game. I forgot that when Bear Alexander hit the portal.
Yeah, okay.
I thought it was before spring practice. Yeah, I'd forgotten that it was right there, because even then that was a kind of an eye-popping moment, and that was before we were in this new world where the judges in Tennessee and West Virginia have allowed everybody to transfer 12 months a year as many times as they want. So there will be options between April 15th and April 30th. It'll be interesting to see if
do we want to bring up the elephants in the room then?
Yeah, sure.
The Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant rumors.
Oh no, I don't. All right, so please fill me in.
Like, I think Bud mentioned the Big Ten on purpose there first, just a minute ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the Michigan thing, it's how much do they trust the new coach, right?
Mhm.
Do they now I don't, who knows? Like, there's all kinds of rumors about all these different players, mainly I think because SEC schools can't recruit off SEC rosters now due to the no SEC to SEC rule. But yeah, I mean,
those are two large NFL bound elephants. Goodness gracious. I hadn't heard these. Right. So
I had heard like teams were hoping Will Johnson would jump in and stuff.
I don't know that they will, but there are rumors out there. But I'd be surprised if anybody from that defense, at least a star player, leaves.
This is pulling from my own, like bias. It might remind me of the Drake. Could this be like the Drake May rumors, where the Drake May rumors were powered largely by those who were very much hoping that the Drake May rumors were going to be true? It's weird. Everybody at Georgia and Alabama and all these other places are saying, like, hey, Drake May might enter the portal. Drake May might enter the portal, as if you say it enough times, then it might actually happen. I would imagine that if there's even a whiff of possibility that players like Grant and Graham could enter the transfer portal, then yeah, you're probably trying to speak that into existence.
So, I mean, the other thing is he hired Greg Scruggs to be the D-line coach, right? And then Scruggs got arrested for a DUI and then resigned. So there has been a little bit of turnover there on the defensive line in the coaching ranks.
And your defensive coordinator's gone. And oh gosh, see, there's all the makings to be able to keep the rumor going. How about it? All right. So earlier in the show, we were talking about the quarterback in the ACC and trying to figure out, where they stack up against each other. I mean, Bud, as we turn our attention to NC State. One last one. Actually, can we get some Cam Coleman highlights out here before we leave? Oh yeah. This is the good stuff right here. Let's go. Because this guy just absolutely it was like Cam Coleman and the kickers. I mean, it's not always like the first thing that you want to be excited about, but certainly is these are positive
That's the backup
things.
kicker too, Chip.
Just booting it.
I forgot their kicker's name, but he was held out. The broadcast was talking about, and then the dude booted the 58-yarder.
58.
58. Yeah. It was.
He's going to enter the portal and command a big paycheck.
Who needs a kicker who can bit?
That's nice tracking.
Yeah, he does track the ball down. Like, this is something you can see in his high school highlights. He stays on that thing.
Yeah.
Heck, I mean, he was fully extended over the shoulder looking back. That's not a lot of guys do that very well. I
mean, it's just there. And maybe wide receiver is, probably one of the few places where you're going to be able to get this, where even when the players on your team, like you were showing up earlier than most freshmen, and all of these other players who've been in the program are just like, yeah, he's special. Like, we were rallying around this guy. We were boosting this guy up. I saw it mentioned in the tailgate. How would you feel if, you're a sophomore, you're a junior, you put in all this time, and now all of a sudden all the buzz is that this rookie's going to take snaps from you? I mean, a lot of times you're excited that someone that talented is your teammate. Gives you a better chance to win. You want to go win football games. And so it does look like everybody around Auburn is excited about Cam Coleman's arrival and trying to build him up because they know that he's going to make them a much, much more dynamic offense.
It was a weird year for receiver recruiting. Like, normally we don't see these big body guys who are like that developed as a player. A lot of times, like your slot guys, they have the better body control because there's not as much body to control at that age. And yet at the top of this one, it's like, wow, he's really good. He's really good. Like, these guys are very good.
All right. So as we turn our attention to NC State, do you think that, and by the way, adding to that conversation, we'll get to Virginia Tech a little bit later in the month. Like, Kyron Drones might also like a word. I know that's your boy, Tom. Could Grayson McCall be one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the ACC this season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could Chip Patterson be one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the ACC this season? Probably not, but
have you seen me try to throw it beyond 12 yards?
No.
I mean, we're talking like I mean, we criticize Oregon's quarterbacks for their arm strength. You should see me try to throw
Chip's
a post
looking
out.
at Chip's getting those daydream eyes watching Bo Nix throw those bubble screens. Like, I wish I could do that.
Hey, I'm a great point guard if we're just going side to side. I can do good ball placement. I can go from one side of my kitchen and target the like pillow on the far couch, but I know that's only about 10 to 12 yards away. So here's let me pull up my my NC State notes here. We remember them going into the portal to get Grayson McCall, but Jordan Waters, running back from Duke, looks like he is leading a room that has some real depth. Noah Rogers, who transferred over from Ohio State, I'm not going to call this like a Jamison Williams situation, but he certainly looks like he's the real deal. Wesley Grimes looked good as well. I mean, but am I wrong? Did this NC State staff do a good job of not only going out to bring in a lot of instant impact players, but players who look like they fit and will really help the Wolfpack be impactful in 2024?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, look, it's a little concerning. Noah Rogers didn't do anything last year at Ohio State, but that room was super, super loaded. So I'm willing to give him a pass. I was reading Pack Pride and Dave Doran's like, we just have so many more options this year to where to go with the football that we did last year. I think he's excited about where coordinator Robert and I can take this offense. McCall looked pretty good.
Yeah.
I was encouraged by that because that last year, I know he got hurt and he just didn't look great to me. So it was nice to see him look a little bit like he used to look. He also looked in shape, a little more athletic maybe than he was at Coastal. If you put Concepcion on the inside, this is sort of like hybrid tight end Jolly they have. Jolly.
Jolly, yeah, you got it.
But like, he's not too bad. Let Jordan Waters, the running back they got from Duke, also look good. Now, I will say this. They were going, and Michael Clark did a great job on Pack Pride of noting each series who they were going up against.
Oh, that's right. Don't look at the score. The score was 51-7, but it was ones against threes.
Yes,
almost across
right. It wasn't
the board.
ones versus twos. It was ones versus threes. So if you wanted to design the spring game for your defense to look really good when the first stringers are on the field and the offense to look really good when their first stringers are on the field, you did it right. Like that looked really, really good. So I would like to at least see them against twos, not like threes and walk-ons, but it still looked a hell of a lot just operationally better than it did last year. Last year, NC State was at times kind of borderline unwatchable.
Yes. It was Brendan Armstrong looking downfield for a second and then taking off running a lot of the time.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't watch this spring game, so I really have no comments on it, but just to go over what I've talked about, it will be interesting to see Grayson McCall in this offense stepping up in competition. Bud, you mentioned he looks more athletic. He looks to be in better shape. That's good because I think that was a concern I had going into it. But my estimation and my expectations for NC State are always going to be pretty high because I just think Dave Doran's done just such a great job with that program that the floor for them is like 7-5, 8-4. So when I look at the ACC this year, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the quarterback situation and just the lack of what's the obvious elite team. NC State, to me, going into the year, no matter what, is going to be a team that's going to be competing, to be in the ACC championship. And I think that if Grayson McCall is the guy we saw at Coastal and these guys that they've brought in the portal hit, NC State could very easily do that. Now, the defense, you got to replace Peyton Wilson, who was just Mr. Do Everything for them last year. But I do think there is talent on that unit, and I expect with that coaching staff, they're going to be a solid defense. This is a team that I think we need to keep an eye on going into the fall.
They did hold out like
a couple
most
guys
of their defensive studs.
Yeah.
Van didn't play.
No Battle.
Aiden White, the corner, didn't play. A couple other guys didn't go. I do think the offense has to take a step up because although I have like max confidence in that defensive staff at NC State to put a good product on the field, Peyton Wilson, that was like one of the best seasons you'll ever see from a college linebacker. I mean, he just, how often do linebackers just win you games? And he kind of did. That Louisville game, he just like took it over.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to because the offense wasn't doing jack that night, right?
He was.
I was listening to some NFL draft podcast, and they were like, okay, if you got like which of these linebackers could be a Hall of Famer in this draft class? And they're like, oh, Peyton Wilson. He's like, if the medicals check out, he's a no doubt top half of the first round linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
like the medicals last year on the field for him checked out. Like he stayed pretty healthy. Like I know it's an NFL draft concern, but that is the level of player that NC State lost. Like they lost that level of production. A guy that NFL dudes are like, oh, if the medicals are good, he's a top half of the first round backer, backers don't go top half of the first round.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal, like he is the perfect marriage of like God-given athletic ability and a mind for the game that make his instincts incredible.
It's not they're both white linebacker comps, but he is Kuechly-esque. If you go back and watch Luke Kuechly at BC, they're very similar to what Peyton Wilson looked like for NC State last year.
I might have told you this. I think Peyton Wilson has said that.
Yeah.
I think because he's from North Carolina. I want to say he's from Hillsboro.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he has been modeling his game, looking
you can
up
tell
to
they've worked together. Yes.
Yeah, like that's something else. All right, so not the Grayson McCall, who again, you mentioned the Robert Anae offense having more options than just KC Concepcion. Like he is at his best. He is efficient. He is accurate. He has good ball placement, and he sets you up to be able to take advantage of space afterwards. That should all be great. But what was your read on CJ Bailey, the freshman quarterback that NC State's got? Because if you look at McCall clearly as just like a 1-year rental, a bridge, do you think CJ Bailey is going to be the next quarterback to step up? Maybe that's the vision for 25 and beyond.
So Bailey was a really hard evaluation in high school because do you know who you're throwing to?
Chip.
There's that name again. Jeremiah Smith.
Oh.
And on the other, now I'm not kidding here, Chaminade. On the other side, JoJo Trader, who was like a 4/5-star kid who is killing it right now as a freshman in Miami's camp. So guess what, guys? There were not a lot of like thread the needle opportunities at Bailey in high school because those two dudes were WTFO a lot. So I was curious to see how he would play, right? NC State liked him a lot. Miami offered him really late in the process. There was some debate as to whether that was a true offer or perhaps maybe to try to get in a little bit better with Jeremiah Smith. I remember talking to some coaches at Elite 11, and I was like, this looks a little rough. And the ball velocity for a guy who's like 6'5", but is skinny was not great. And they thought they said something interesting that kind of stuck with me. They're like, part of this thing is the stride length is a little off. So we don't really need to change the arm angle all that much. Like if we can get his stride length adjusted to where he's kind of more balanced and generating more torque throughout the throw, we probably can unlock some RPMs. And that's something that's actually kind of fixable in college. To whereas like if you have a Tim Tebow style throwing motion, that's very difficult to fix.
So he's like long striding, like the way when he runs.
Yeah. So I was kind of curious as to like how like the consistency of stride length.
He can move. I did not.
Super nerdy.
I like it. We need that. We need to be able to,
just kind of stuck him in. It's like,
yeah.
I thought he looked good. Like he made a couple decisions that are like, okay, that worked in high school, but not now. But I know they're pretty excited about it. So that's awesome.
Good stuff coming out of NC State. So I would not say that my opinion has changed on NC State, but I'm more emboldened in my opinion on NC State's outlook for the ACC, which is, we just mentioned like Clemson right there at the top. I think that when we get into the next group where it's like Miami's if Miami is the prove it, I think that NC State is the proven, and I'm going to put them kind of in that same spot where Miami might have a higher ceiling, but I think the high floor means that if we're just going to start this thing and line them all up in a pecking order, I'm probably going to put them in that group of contenders just below the Tigers. Is that how do you guys see sort of the ACC, especially as it pertains to the Wolfpack?
Yeah, tier 2, but I don't think the gap between tier 1 and tier 2 is very significant.
I tend to agree. I think if they can somehow win at Clemson.
Oh, and create a tiebreaker headache for the Tigers?
Well, they will be favored in the remaining 7 ACC games. It's Wake, Cal and Stanford, Duke, I think it's Georgia Tech and Raleigh. So at Clemson, September 21st. You kind of got to have that.
What a massive
game. Host Wake, host Cuse, at Cal, host Stanford, host Duke. Oh, it's at Georgia Tech. And then, of course, at UNC. And maybe you're coin flippy at Georgia Tech, depending on how Tech looks. But if you're good enough to beat Clemson in Clemson, you're probably favored in that game as well.
Imagine if NC State picks up wins against Tennessee and Clemson early in the year.
At that point, I would be distrustful.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
point, you expect they're going to lose to Cal.
Oh,
now.
God. Here we go. Jade Knott's going to run for 250 yards against these guys.
Yes.
If they do that, the expectation is college ball playoff.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And it's like Chip always says with Miami, the great battle, NC State versus expectations.
Do they lose at Cal?
Yeah.
For sure. I'm taking the Cal money line if they beat Tennessee and Clemson.
Look, I had to do the yeoman's work of coming up with a key spring question for all 17 ACC schools. You know how few resources there are for information on like 6 of those 17 ACC schools?
Yes,
I mean,
do.
You actually have to you have to get in touch with like the actual coaches because there's no information out there.
There's like a Substack for Cal, I think. And we have a Cal 24/7 sports site as well. It just depends on like what kind of access you're going to get, that week. Do you ever just call the SID and be like, hey man, like I'm not looking for insider info here. Just give me like a top level, like what's a question you guys don't feel like you don't know.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, this is all I've got. I've worked for an hour and a half. Is this fair? I'm going to write this. Is this fair? No, Jade Knott's a stud, Cal running back. They got Mikey Matthews coming in there at wide receiver. Jake Spavital's the new offensive coordinator. Like Cal's frisky. Cal is going to get some teams in the ACC, some ACC fan bases that are looking at Cal and just thinking they're going to be a pushover are going to get got. So
yeah,
hopefully that's
Cal's got a little bit of NIL money to throw around too.
Cal does?
Yeah. Interesting.
I guess that's how you get Mikey Matthews.
They're called Pell Grants, and they're
no. So yeah, it will be very interesting, but feeling optimistic as I was, optimistic because of the way that I liked a lot of the portal additions. Those portal additions looked good in the spring game. Optimistic because the schedule looks pretty favorable. That remains the same. So NC State definitely a team to keep your eye on as we head into 2024. We will do on Thursday a little bit of a look ahead to a massive day of spring game action. Yes, the Buckeyes will be a big part of that. And any national championship game picks before we get out of here?
UConn
by double digits again?
Yeah, probably. Purdue, I think I don't know what their guards are going to be able to do against UConn's perimeter players. I just think that UConn could shut them down.
Yeah, there's a physics problem, or I guess like a size, strength, athleticism, like Tristan Newton, Stephon Castle, Cam Spencer going up against Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer.
I talked all year, like with Illinois, like there were like maybe 5 guys in the country who I think could have, defend Terrence Shannon. UConn has 2 of them, and they used them very well in that game. So I look at how Purdue's guards have been so huge when teams are kind of trying to take Edey out and hitting shots. I think UConn can take that away from them and make Purdue very one-dimensional.
Extremely like basketball casual take here, unsurprisingly. Did you guys know that Bill Murray's son is like the offensive coach for UConn?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that Bill Murray took Kyle Boone's seat on press row and Kyle Boone had to send Bill Murray packing? CBS Sports College basketball savant Kyle Boone was sitting, and another media member took a picture of him and was like, "Hey, like, why is Kyle Boone just like on one knee right now on media row?" And Kyle Boone was like, "Yeah, because Bill Murray's sitting in my seat." And KB, oh my gosh, we got the photo. Yeah. So at first, people are making fun of KB, but that's because look right behind him. That's supposed to be Kyle's seat. And he had to come be like, hey, like, Bill, I love your movies. You're
get the hell out of my
tremendous comedic talent. I don't care who your son is. I need to cover the Final Four. Yeah, he's wearing the fisherman's hat. Yeah.
Yeah. I think at that point, well, you can't really go buy a ticket, but
no,
I would have just stolen 40's seat. I would have just taken Pat's stuff
there's
and thrown
40
it
on
off
the
the table and been like, sorry, Pat, this is where I sit now.
I am the Pat 40 now.
Yeah, sorry.
Why don't you count up these 40 minutes over out there in the concourse? Let's go. No, I love
40-yard dash out that seat.
Yeah, 40-yard dash. Yeah. We joke because we love. All right, so Don, I saw you in the tailgate. Yes, there's a Wednesday show. We will be back at 11 a.m. Just setting the table for the continuation of this spring game conversation, which will be on Thursday. So we will be back at 11 a.m. I will be back in the home studio in Raleigh, and happy for it. Watch on CBS Sports HQ for all the coverage. I'll be doing halftime show, post-game show, a little bit of pregame stuff starting around 7:45, all leading up to that 9:20 tip-off of the 10th one seed against one seed matchup since we started seeding in 1979. And if all the prior one seed against one seed title games are any indication, it's going to be a good one. So hope you enjoy the game. We will be back Wednesday at 11 a.m. And you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.